Recently, 2 state representatives announced this is their last term as a member of the Western Mass legislative delegation. Representative Jose Tosado is retiring, and Representative Aaron Vega says it's time for a new direction. What's the impact of these departures, and what room does it make for different approaches? I discussed this and more with political consultant Ryan McCollum of RMC Strategies.
It's a huge loss for the Valley, right? And so 2 Latino state representatives and two state reps who served their districts very, very well. 2 state reps who, were kind of behind the scenes kind of people, not all the glitz and glamour, but kind of get the work done, both on Beacon Hill and back home for their constituents. So there's going to be a big hole, but people are ready to step up and fill it.
We've already seen people stepping up and tossing their hats into the ring. And before we go any further, I just want to say, full disclosure, you have done some political consulting work for the representatives in the past. Just let the viewers know. Yep. In the context of this broader situation, though, when we talk about who stepped up so far, if we look at Springfield, we saw Orlando Ramos and Denise Hurst step up. Yep. And we know Springfield is the largest minority population community in Western Mass. Sure. And 2 people of color who've tossed their hat into the ring. How important do you think it is to have someone who is from the minority community to represent that particular seat?
I think it's important. I think that minority majority districts can have somebody who knows the same issues that folks are dealing with. I also think it's important to have it in Boston as well. So there's not a ton of people of color representing Boston in the state, in the House, and even less in the Senate. So it is important. With that said, I don't know if the field's set. I think you might get...
It's really early in the process.
So you might get an Irish person or an Italian person from, Hungry Hill. So we'll see how that works out. Jose did well last time, but he had 2 Irish guys and him. So could be the reverse. You could get 2 people of color and an Irish person who is, they cut up each other's votes, and the Irish person is victorious in the end. So it is important. Then you look at Holyoke, and so far there's been 2 Irish people for Aaron's seat. So we'll see. Identity politics are what they are, but there is some need or feeling to have folks represent you when you look like you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and when you specifically look at Holyoke, latest census numbers, the estimates say that 52% of the population in Holyoke is Hispanic. Mm-hmm. And obviously Aaron Vega is coming from that community. Mm-hmm. Do you think that you'll see someone else step up into the race from the Hispanic community, or you think kind of the field's set there?
Possibly, but I think the field might be set. I mean, Holyoke's a tight-knit community regardless of race.
Representative Vega pointed out to us that Patrick Beaudry and Patricia Duffy, who have said they're running, both live on the same street in Holyoke. Yeah. A lot of doors going to be knocked on that street.
They do, and Pat Beaudry grew up in Holyoke, right? So he's a Holyoke guy. Pat Duffy did come from somewhere else than South Hadley. She ran for rep in South Hadley at one point as well. But so Holyoke, they have Alex Morris, a young gay mayor who happens to be white. So there's more of a kind of a Holyoke thing, almost in a race thing. But we'll see. I mean, the field's not set. I don't even think papers are out yet. No. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's quite early. And I think that's interesting, too, because you see such interest so soon. Mm-hmm. Representative Tosado told us that the story, I think, hit Western Mass Politics and Insight that he was intending to announce his retirement. Mm-hmm. And 30 minutes later, Orlando Ramos was on the phone to him saying, I'm thinking of tossing my hat in this ring.
Yeah, there's some political gamemanship in that. And behind the scenes, a lot of times people say, hey, I would have been with you, but so-and-so asked me first. So getting out there first, for some people, think that they think that's an advantage. Other people want to wait and bide their time, see how the field settles to do something. But there is something to getting out there first and sewing up some endorsements right away.
Yeah, and Rep. Tosado, on balance, did say he's going to reserve, endorsements or any sort of saying who he might throw his support behind just yet, because it is early yet. Sure. Looking at the fact that these 2 representatives are exiting, and in 2018, we saw the entire Hampshire County delegation flip. If you look broadly, you could think that that's a lot of institutional knowledge that's being lost and a lot of seniority that's being lost. Mm-hmm. Flip side of that could be fresh blood, new eyes, new perspectives. Where do you sit on that one?
I mean, it cuts both ways, right? And so fresh blood and new eyes, new perspective, like you said, is always a good thing. But at the same time, Western Mass, we're already kind of playing catch up with the fact that we have less reps and less senators down there. And it does seem that in the eastern part of the state, there's more staying power. And so, we have to be quick studies, and the voters have to put people in place that they know will be quick studies and can rise to leadership or in prominent roles right away. And both Jose and Aaron did that, right? I mean, Aaron's he's the lead sponsor on the education bill, bringing $1.5 billion back to Chapter 70 throughout the state. And then Jose is really a leader in mental health. And they weren't there for too long. I mean, they were there for several terms.
Right, they came out of city council, so they've really covered state and local politics and rooted in those issues as they take them to the State House.
So hopefully we get people who are just as talented and just as driven who can rise up and become prominent right away.
I want to pivot and look at the Senate seat that Don Humison vacated to become Westfield mayor. Don Humison, a Republican. As you know, there are not many of those in Massachusetts, let alone the Western Mass delegation. We see John Kane, who is a Republican, who's announced his intention to run, and State Representative John Velas, who's a Democrat, who's challenging him. As you look at that race, do you think that for the folks at Westfield, it's about the platform and the people, or it's about the R or the D next to the name?
I think John's proven that it's really about the platform and the people, because the seat that he has now was a Republican seat. Representative Velas, sorry.
Two Johns.
Representative Velas has proven already that it's about the person, right? And so that was a Republican seat for decades, and John was able to flip that seat. Not because he said, hey, you should vote for me because I'm a Democrat. He was saying, hey, you should vote for me because Westfield's my priority, and I'll prioritize you guys down there.
And you're saying he's done that as state representative.
He's done that as state representative.
Do you think it'll be the same thing for the Senate race?
I do. I think he's going to have to run that kind of race. That's a Senate seat that's been a Republican seat back to Knappich as well. And so he's going to have to tell the people outside of Westfield the same thing.
So
Go ahead.
Shaping up to be a pretty competitive race then, possibly.
Absolutely. It'll be a competitive race because the numbers would fare towards a Republican. Agawam's a pretty conservative area. The hill towns are a pretty conservative area. Holyoke, Chicopee, East Hampton, now that's a Democratic area. So it is an interesting district that probably, if you look at the numbers, cuts maybe close to half, but in Republican hands for the last several years.
Yeah. I want to ask you about a few national issues. The impeachment trial wrapped up recently. We saw President Trump was acquitted by the Senate. With the exception, former Massachusetts governor, now Utah Senator Mitt Romney, broke with his party and voted to convict on one of those two charges that were through there. Short term, he's being loved, he's being scorned, but look a little longer term. What do you think that the impact of this decision by Governor Romney might be?
I think long term, when you look back on history, it's going to show that he showed a lot of backbone, and he did what he thought was correct. Now, does it mean that he's going to run for president and get some support from people in the middle and even some Democrats for doing this? Maybe, but you're talking about an independently wealthy person, already somewhat prominent. He's really big into his church, so he doesn't really need to get Trump's blessing and really have to worry about Trump. So he was able to have his independent streak and do what he thought was right. So I think when we look back at it, we'll look at him as somebody and he explained why he did it. He didn't do it necessarily for the political reasons I said before. He did it because he thought it was the right thing to do. So I think looking back on that, people will look proudly on it.
Yeah, he gave a really heartfelt explanation. Yeah. And depending on the media accounts, some of them he actually got choked up when he was talking to reporters, depending on it. And also interesting sort of back and forth with the president and Senator Romney, because at certain times he possibly was going to be brought into the cabinet. There was that discussion. So interesting back and forth there.
Sure.
Boston Globe came out with a very interesting editorial recently, and I want to read a part of it. It talks about New Hampshire and Iowa and whether or not it's time for Iowa and New Hampshire to step back in their roles in the presidential process. It says, in quote, part, an antiquated system that gives outsized influence in choosing presidents to two states that demographically more resemble 19th century America than they do the America of today. So Ryan, as polls are closing in New Hampshire tonight, what do you think about this?
I mean, demographically, sure, it's 19th century America. I would love to have a state that is more diverse when it comes to race and socioeconomic issues, et cetera. But at the same time, places like Iowa and New Hampshire allow an upstart campaign like Pete Buttigieg to do well.
Supporting.
Yeah, I'm a Pete guy. I like Pete. I'm not working for him, but I like Pete. But so if the first race was in California, I don't know if Pete could do that.